can I call it to order now? Are we on, Patrick?
Yes, we're good to go.
Okay, I'd like to call the ADR meeting to order. My name is Mark Kruchnet. I'm the current chair of the ADR and Ross resident. I'll let the other ADR members quickly introduce themselves and we'll get on to what will be a full schedule for the evening.
I'll start because I think I'm the leftmost on the top bar. So I'm Joey Buckingham, Ross resident designer, and happy to be here.
Mark Fritz, again, same architect, Ross resident, been on the review board for a while.
I'm Laura Dewar, Ross resident and architect, and I'm new to the review board.
I'm Steven Sutro. I'm an architect and Ross resident.
Okay, before we go to the meat and potatoes of the meeting, as it were, if anyone has any comments they want to make on something not on the agenda tonight, you can speak for up to 3 minutes. And if there are no takers, we'll dive right in. To let those of you who have not been here before know, the way we do this is the town and the property owner and or design team presents the project. Then the ADR asks questions. We get our feedback from the applicants. At that point, we then open it up to any neighbors who might be here or others who might be interested in the project. And once they're done with that, we then bring it back to the ADR for our final comments and recommendation to the town council. And let's see, hold on, that's the meeting minute. Sorry, I'm on the wrong, that's what we need to approve. The first order of business is actually to approve the minutes from September 15th. I read over the minutes. They seemed fine to me. Does someone on the ADR want to second those and approve them?
I second it. Approve it.
Okay. Thank you, Patrick. And the first order of business is the Hale residence at 92 Laurel Grove Avenue. Patrick or Matthew, would you like to present that?
Our group members, planner Matthew Weintraub. Item 4A is the Hale residence at 92 Laurel Grove Avenue. And the lot size is just over an acre in gross area. It should be noted that there is a road easement that occupies a portion of the western part of the property. So the area, the developable area of the property is actually a little less than an acre. Also, one would note that there is a stream located along Laurel Grove Avenue. And so there is appropriate setbacks on the property for development from that stream. Project history, in 1997, this is based on the town's records, a variance and design review was issued to make alterations and additions to the existing residence. And in 1998, an amendment to that project was approved. The current project description, here we see the property with Laurel Grove Avenue on the right side and Skyland Avenue on the top. The current project preliminary activities would involve removing the existing driveway, the existing pool and the existing pool shed, and the perimeter fencing around the property. Also, the project would reconstruct the existing 3-car garage, which I'm highlighting with or circling with my cursor now. That does have an existing non-conforming setback. And there would be no work on the existing single-family residence. And the other components of the project, major components, would be then to construct a new 1-story, 800 square foot accessory dwelling unit along Skyland Way in this location, occupying area that was the existing driveway. Also to construct a new 2nd-story ADU above the reconstructed 3-car garage in this location, maintaining the existing non-conforming setback. I should mention the setback for the ADU number 1 here is approximately It would be 24 feet from the edge of the existing roadway, and it would be about 18 feet from the edge of the property line. However, it would be about 4 feet from the road easement that is on the property, which currently there's no plans to develop that road easement.
And what, I'm sorry, just to interrupt for a second, what should the setback be on that side?
So it's a setback is 25 feet, side yard setback. The effective practical setback from the edge of roadway is actually 24 feet. So from the standpoint of physical distance to the roadway, it almost meets the recommended or the minimum setback. The code, however, does require setbacks to be measured from the edge of easements. So that's why technically this ADU is located within, would be located 4 feet from the edge of the easement line and within what would be considered the side setback. So other components of the project include constructing a new pool and associated patio close to ADU number 1, and also constructing a new driveway on Skyland Avenue in this location here. And they would, the applicant would then abandon the driveway on Laurel Grove Avenue and fill in that area. Other components of the project include landscape screening around ADU number 1 and the proposed pool, as well as introducing a new outdoor outdoor activity patio in this location adjacent to the house and aligned with the house. Should be noted that this patio is proposed to encroach into a setback, and the distance would be approximately 14 feet, I believe, from the setback to the patio. And that patio would include an outdoor fireplace as well. And here's proposed colors and materials, quality hardscaping and structural materials. The proposed buildings would be constructed with shingle siding and Class A cedar shake, which actually meets fire requirements. The existing deer fence would be replaced in kind, essentially along the property lines. The new vehicular gate would essentially be very similar to the existing vehicular gate on Laurel Grove Avenue. And permeable cobblestone pavers are proposed for the new driveway. The building elevations, here are some representative building elevations for garage and ADU on the left. So we can see that the new garage door would accommodate 3 parking spots within that structure. And we see the entrances to the ADU here. And then the second ADU on the right side, a 1-story structure. Should be noted that it would be built on a grade. So it would actually exceed the maximum allowed building height of 16 feet. So a variance would be requested to exceed the building height in approximately this location here at the back of the building. Both ADUs would actually request exceptions for height. Public comments were received from Jane Heath at 2 Skyview Way. She objected to the project based on the proposed density. She's also concerned about traffic impacts from the new driveway and parking impacts from construction. I should mention that the town engineer has reviewed the new driveway location and has approved that. Ms. Heath is also concerned about potential loss of landscape plantings along roadways. Apparently has occurred in the past. The plan does show infill plantings along the roadways and along the perimeter. So with that, staff requests that the ADR group discuss the merits of the project and provide a formal recommendation to the town council regarding the merits of the project consistent with the design review criteria and standards. That concludes my presentation. I'm available to answer questions. Thank you.
Matthew, could you
Go ahead, Mark.
show us the ADU number 2 from the north side, which would be, I'm sorry, the east side, excuse me.
Sure.
So as you would see it from Laurel Grove,
Mhm.
because as you pointed out, it's an uphill slope. Or, yeah.
just, let me just scroll through the plans here. Let's see.
That was it.
There.
This one?
Hmm,
I think
I'm
so.
not sure.
That one, Joey, is what you'd see from.
No, it's the other one. It's the first one because the pool's to the left when you see it from Laurel Grove. It's go back to the last slide. Sorry, that one,
Okay.
the east elevation.
Right. Yes, yes, yes.
Did you see the cut of the pool?
Yes.
That's from the interior of the property.
Okay. Thank you. That's what I wanted to see. Okay, sorry, Stephen, we'll open it up now to the ADR members to ask questions of the applicants and or Matthew.
I think before we hear from the applicant, I'd love to hear from Matthew about the findings for the variance from staff perspective.
Sure, I'd be happy to talk about preliminary findings. Staff has not developed full findings yet at this point. I think some of the, so there's actually two types of requests being requested. There's what's called ADU exceptions, and there are variances, and there's a difference between those two. So ADU exceptions are being requested in order to construct more than one up to 2 ADUs on the property, and also to exceed the 16-foot one-story height limit for ADUs. The reasoning behind that proposal is that the property does meet the minimum 1 acre lot size to be considered for more than one ADU. And the construction of ADUs is, and housing in general, is a priority for the town and the state of California. Those would be some preliminary notes to make. I wouldn't necessarily call those findings. With regard to the variance request for the patio, one would note that the proposed patio is designed to align with the residents, to not be placed in sort of an offset location where it might be awkward to leave the residence and go around a diagonal path or something and go to the patio. So I think from a design perspective, that would seem to be the reasoning. However, part of staff's making findings is to consider ADR group comments as well as public comments received at hearings prior to town council. And so at this time, I believe that's about as far as staff can go right now in terms of answering that question.
Do you have any more color on the exception for height or the variance for height from your perspective?
I would say for the one-story ADU that's proposed along Laurel Grove Avenue, provided that location is consistent with design review criteria and standards and does receive an ADR group approval, and I'm not saying it should or shouldn't, but if that were to be the case, then I would say that that's a fine justification to exceed the height in certain locations on that building, because it's being built in a certain location to certain specifications, and that particular location simply requires certain portions of the building to exceed 16 feet. However, if there's input from the ADR group and or the public to indicate that there's a better location for that ADR that would indicate that exception wouldn't be required, then that would be something that would be considered as well. From the perspective of the proposed two-story, I would say retaining the existing covered parking is certainly a benefit to the project. Retaining three car covered parking, and then being able to utilize that existing structure in a way that is traditional in California. So those are, again, some of my thoughts in terms of those.
Great, thank you, Matthew.
I have a question about FAR. So allowed FAR, I can barely read this, is 6,330 square feet. And then you get the 500 square foot ADU bonus, which would bring you to 6,830. And then on this proposed plan, we are topping out at 7,286. Do I have that right?
Yes, the total proposed square footage would be 7,286. And then subtracting 1,518 square feet of ADU space, which is allowed to exceed the maximum, the practical total would be 5,768 square feet. So if one removes the allowable square footage that's allowed to be accepted for ADUs, then the project is under the FAR maximum.
The rules have changed, Joey, right?
So how did you come up with 1,500 bonus for 2 ADUs if it's 500 apiece?
So the code actually provides for up to 800 square feet per ADU to be accepted.
And that's changed since 2 or 3 years ago?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
That must be when the height limit was put in as well. I don't remember the original height limit. And then Matthew, the height limit,
2018, it was 500 square feet and it was 30-foot height limit.
yeah, okay. That was my recollection, Joey. I was going to ask
Yeah.
that height limit question.
I know it well.
This is a result of the state overlay, of the state mandates.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember the limit on 2 ADUs for a certain lot size. So that's good. Thank you, Stephen and Matthew. Joey.
Are there any further questions for Matthew or the applicants? Or do people just want to comment on the project? Or would you like to see the elevations and comment on the architecture, or it might?
Are we going to hear from the applicant?
Yeah.
Is that next up, Mark? Is the list hearing from the applicant themselves?
Well, if they're here, they can certainly speak. I don't know if they are.
I believe-
Yeah, I see representatives from the team, I think.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I am Kim. I'm from Chambers and Chambers. Thank you for reviewing our project. I just wanted to add that one of our neighbors that at 9 Skyline wasn't noted on the neighborhood outreach, and on Monday reached out and showed support of the project. The only concern was parking on Skyline during construction, which is what most of the neighbors were concerned about. We remodeled the house a couple of years ago, and there's a lot of construction on that street, so I can understand. Our clients have addressed that with each owner's neighbor as much as they could. So our intention is to create an open communication and make sure that that street is not clogged with construction vehicles. We do have.
And Kim, you don't need to go over the parking here because we don't deal with that. That's not our purview.
Okay, right.
That's construction management.
I would also like to clarify something on the setback for the, on the north side for the ADU number 2. On our drawings, it looks like there's 24, it's set back 24 feet from the property line when actually it's 20, sorry, it says it's 28, but it's, or 18, but it's really 20 feet, if that makes any sense. So from Skyland property line to the proposed ADU at number 2, it's really 20 feet.
The dimension there goes from the roadway or some other line, not the property line.
That's from the roadway to the face of building.
Okay. So it would need a variance because it's not set back enough according to town regulations for both the property line and the easement. Okay. Does anyone have any, or Kim, do you have anything else to say, or should we just ask you questions if anyone has questions for Kim?
I have nothing else to say.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Does anyone have questions for Kim, or do people just want to comment on this? Or actually,
Want to go to
before I-
public first, Mark?
I'll open it up to neighbors if there are any.
Yeah.
Are there any neighbors in the audience or anyone else from the town that wants to comment or opine on this project? Okay.
Might want to, Mark, we might want to make sure everyone knows how to request that because I think most people are on mute until they request. Just to let them know. I think Patrick is the one to raise your hand to or request.
If you raise your hand, Patrick will acknowledge you and unmute you so we can hear you. Okay, so I'll go first on this one. It looks to me like we've got a whole bunch of things going on here. From my point of view, looking at it from Skyland Way in what would be the upper left corner of this picture, at the upper elevation as you're driving down Skyland Way, if a second story was put on that garage, it would for sure be the dominant structure in the view from the roadway, which I think it's fine to have a garage in the front yard where cars are, but I don't think it looks nice when you have a two-story garage structure that hides the majority of the house from the road view, as this did if you're above the lot driving down Skyland Way. And as a general rule, we're trying to, when people alter a non-conforming structure like the existing garage, the most important thing is not to exacerbate the non-conformity. And this would exacerbate the non-conformity by making it both taller within the setbacks and wider, and just adding general more mass to a non-conforming structure. The second ADU, to me, looking at it from Laurel Grove, just even forgetting the fact that it actually violates the setbacks and isn't far enough from the road, looking at it from Laurel Grove, it looked really tall. That was the first thing I noticed looking up that driveway, was just how tall it looks. And when I see the elevation of it, it looks horrible. It's not an attractive building. And once again, you would have a view from the street where your main view is the secondary structure, which in this case happens to be too high, non-conforming, and to me, not that attractive, at least from that angle. I'm sure it looks fine from the pool. And then the other issue is a non-conforming hardscape in the setback on the south side. And I'm not sure why. I mean, I guess the reason why is, as Joey likes to often say, owners want to push all their buildings out as far as possible to maximize the interior space. But in this case, they're doing it by requesting 3 non-conforming parts of a project on a very, 1 acre, almost perfectly square lot. It seems like it'd be pretty easy to add things where they don't affect neighbors and where they look nicer from the street. Those are my comments. Who would like to go next?
I'll go next. Okay, so first of all, I philosophically kind of question the okaying of 2 ADUs based on an acre plus lot, because this is barely scraping by. It's under an acre when you take away the easements. And the reason there are legal easements is because there could be a road built there legally someday. And when you develop a property in Ross, you minus the easements, and then that's your square footage. That's what you get to base all of your design on. So I don't think we can just ignore this easement, because if that easement were ever exercised, that ADU would be 4 feet from the road. So I think we don't consider this as an acre lot, and we consider it as whatever it ends up being minus the easements, which I think is the legal way to do it. So just from the get-go, I question the premise that 2 ADUs would be allowed on this lot. But if that is decided by other folks than me, I do believe we have another situation here that I've seen before, where owners, as Mark Kretschnick just mentioned, they push everything out to the farthest extreme away from their house so you can have a big lawn, and you basically have a lot of non-conformities, where this is a very large lot. You could actually, if you did end up being approved for 2 ADUs and the easement was somehow glossed over, you could pull that pool and that second ADU much closer to the house. I see those pavers between the big lawn and the pool. If you just imagine pulling the pool into that dashed line and bringing the secondary ADU into that, just closer to the house, you also wouldn't have the contours that would force you to make such a tall building on Skyland and force you to have such an awkward building as you see it from Laurel Grove. The contour lines are much more gentle as you come toward the house. So I think you're almost at more of a victim of your desire to push everything away from the house, because you're then A, developing in the setbacks, and B, developing on very more steeply graded land. Okay, so that's for that ADU. And then for the other one that's over the garage, again, you're exacerbating a nonconformity, which that's just drilled into us that you really can't do that. So by making it a 2-story building, you are basically making that nonconformity worse. If you wanted a 2-story building and an ADU and a garage, you could actually bring that building closer to the home. And it would work pretty well. I think you could actually have a connecting garage. So hold on just a sec. If you were going to have that big elevation on Skyland facing people driving up, I think we've really been schooled in not relying on landscape, because a lot of times landscape doesn't work out and it never looks as good as people say it's going to look in the pretty drawings. And you can also see the landscape on Skyland isn't really taking, because it's under oak trees and they're trying to grow a hedge that, pardon me, and it's not really working. I think if you were going to have a tall elevation like that on the back side of an ADU that's kind of looking at Skyland Way, I might suggest architecturally to make it more interesting and perhaps clad the lower part of it with stone, have a stone planter that had dedicated trees, basically hide it and make it look more interesting than just a very bare facade that I again think is forced by the fact that you're pushing it out into the steeper section of the property. Sorry, I've got a ton of notes here. I also think you wouldn't need the exception for the height for the ADU exception if you moved it closer to the house. You could sink it down a little bit more and it wouldn't have such a drop off. And I think that's it.
Thanks, Joey. Laura, Stephen, Mark, who would like to go next?
Stephen, you up? Laura, you up?
Sure, I'm happy to go. I'm happy to go. I agree with Joey and Mark in all of their points. If the ADUs conformed in every way, then I would have less of a problem with it. But because they don't, and they feel bulk and mass wise just slightly inappropriate, I don't feel like I could give the architecture an endorsement to tip the scales for the findings. You know, if it's not up to us to decide the findings, I can't find it architecturally appropriate in a way that that I would advise council in that direction. You know, if we lowered the plate height of the ADU number 2 and scooted it in a little bit, I don't know whether I'm comfortable or not with the second story of the other one. But I think you've heard from Mark and Joey on that. But it's just, it's too much bulk and mass in places that where as an application that requests variance and exceptions, I don't see it as quite a fit yet. I think if the ADU number 2, I think Joey's spot on that elevation is is not very elegant. It's symmetrical, but it's very blank. There's no planar change and there's no material. It's designed like the back of a building. And if it is totally successfully screened, then maybe it doesn't matter, but it's not, I don't think it's a polite design of the rear of that building. That's all.
Thank you, Stephen. Laura, Mark?
I can jump in. I concur with the previous comments around the bulk and mass location of the ADU on the existing driveway. Pulling that in seems to be, you could wipe out a few variances all at once by doing that, and eliminating the presence of that unit so close to the road. I would say the articulation used on the garage, I mean, I'm assuming you're knocking the garage down and rebuilding it as a 2-story. That articulation, some of that language, some of that character could be carried over to that other unit to articulate the backside, at least make it a bulk and mass that is broken down in scale a little more. But I think scooting it back away from the road eliminates the need for a height variance, in addition to violating the setback variance with the easement. I would say I am a fan, I think, of moving the drive. I think that's just to throw it out there as a support. I think the access from Skyline seems good. It's in concert with other driveways that are accessed as well. And then you eliminate such a long drive on the property. So I think that's a smart move, really, really nice. And I think I get the symmetry and the location of that patio in the, what I would characterize as south setback. I just think it's hard to make findings for something that is, on your almost an acre lot where you're putting a patio so close to the property line. It's just, it seems unnecessary. I would have difficulty making findings for that, other than the symmetry, which I think there are probably a variety of ways to satisfy that from a building relationship to that patio. So pull that in, get that out of the setback. Again, it's a nice move architecturally, but I think it's unnecessary to have that variance included in that as well. I think the other comments I support from Mark and Joey.
Thank you, Mark. Laura?
Yeah, I agree with all the other comments, really. And I think the concern would be for both of these ADUs that they would become the primary focus rather than the residents from the roadways. And especially with the ADU near Laurel Grove, just the screening for it and how quickly could that grow in to provide more privacy and screening. So those are the only comments I have.
Okay. Thank you, Laura.
And Chair Kitchener, if I can interrupt real quick, I did receive some emailed comments during the public comment period. So I'll just read those off. There's comments and questions. They're from Natalie Wilson, who I believe is in the audience. And they are as follows: concern, loss of on-street parking in the area. And then questions, will the address be changed to Skyland? And if the pool is to be constructed on a downslope, will there be a large retaining wall to hold the pool structure?
Okay, thank you. So regarding the parking, that's not something we deal with here at ADR. We deal with design. And that's a town issue for town staff and or the town council. In regard to the retaining wall, we never got to speaking about a retaining wall in this design, but I think it's a unanimous recommendation that the project not move forward. So I don't think there's really a need to discuss a retaining wall at this time, but it's certainly something we will look into on any future submission from this property. So thank you for your correspondence.
I have another question or question/comments. Just for the record, I think that driveway moving to Skyline is a great move if it can be done properly. I think it's just a nicer way to enter their house, and it's more convenient for them, and it's this quiet street. in terms of, I do think we really need to think about, these are 2 ADUs. That's basically 2 apartments that could potentially have 2 to 3 people and 2 to 3 cars. Any family may say, oh no, we'll never do that. But you never know who this house will be sold to in the future. And I think we really need to be cognizant of the fact that there could be quite a lot of cars coming in and out of that house. And so there needs to be appropriate parking spaces to accommodate if 2 ADUs are actually granted, given the supposition that this may or may not be an acre property. I think that's something that really needs to be fleshed out. And lastly, I don't think there are really any hardships on this property that would create the kind of findings we have sometimes in really compromised pieces of land, if that makes any sense.
Thank you. So Patrick, should I sum it up, or do you basically have our summary comments? Which
I think, well, Matthew will be the one that's putting together the summary, so I'd ask him, but I think it would benefit all of us if you just do a quick summary of what you've heard, Chair.
Okay, so Matthew, in one elongated sentence, I would think it was unanimous that there was too much bulk and mass in this project, in the wrong places on the property, too far to the extremes of the property, and requesting multiple variances and exceptions on a lot that's basically a square lot of an acre and should need little to none. And we don't want to exacerbate the few violations of the setback that currently exist.
Thank you. And just to clarify, with respect to the standards and criteria for design review, it sounds like the ADR group is not making a finding that the project is currently consistent with design review criteria and standards. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. We will now move on to the Dickerson residence at 105 Bolinas Avenue.
Yes, thank you, Chair and ADR group members. Please give me just a moment to start my presentation. Apologize for the video gymnastics. Okay, thank you. The Dickerson residence is 105 Bolinas Avenue. The owners are Roger and Melissa Dickerson, and the applicant is Imprints Landscape Architecture. The property is, 13,000 square feet in size, located on the south side of Bolinas Avenue in the R1 zoning district, relatively flat lot located out of the flood zone. Project history, in 1998, the existing residence was constructed. In 1999 and 2000, there were alterations granted to that existing residence. And in 2001, a variance was issued to do landscape and hardscape work in the west side yard setback area. And that brings us to current day project description, which does involve the west side yard setback area, which is proposed now to receive a new combination pool and spa and associated patio. The pool and spa and the patio edge of pavement would be located approximately, or I should say edge of hardscape would be located approximately 10 feet from the side property line. There would be new screening trees located along that side property line, as well as along the rear property line, where an existing hot tub is proposed to be removed as part of the project. The project also includes a new pool equipment enclosure designed to match the existing wood fence, which is behind the front property line adjacent to the house. The pool enclosure would be located actually behind the fence, so it'd be screened from the public view. Colors and materials, quality hardscape and flagstone materials and plant materials are proposed, including large 24-inch screening trees. And public comments were received from Trevor Buck at 83 Bolinas Avenue, who is in support of the project. I'd also note that the applicant's neighborhood outreach description describes that Rich Petrello, the adjacent neighbor at 107 Bolinas Avenue, indicated he supported the project. So he would be the owner who's adjacent to the setback encroachment. So in summary, staff requests that the ADR group discuss the merits of the project and provide a formal recommendation to the town council regarding the merits of the project consistent with design review criteria and standards. And I'm available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Do the Dickersons or Brad want to say anything before we ask any questions that we might have?
I'll let Brad talk if he wants to say anything. I'm fine. This is Roger.
Thanks, Roger.
I don't have a whole lot to say. I think this is a pretty straightforward proposal. I think I'll just answer any questions you might have, and I think we can just go from there.
Okay, thanks, Brad. Does anyone on the ADR, before we discuss it, does anyone in the ADR have any questions for Brad, Matthew, or the Dickersons?
I do. Could you explain any other thoughts you had about locating that pool anywhere else on the property, and how it ended up there? What did you think about the backyard? I just want to know kind of what your thoughts were, how it landed exactly where it landed.
Well, the rear yard is got a number of mature large redwood trees, and there's roots that run all through the entire rear yard space right at the surface. And so putting a pool back there would result in either the death or unstabilizing the redwood trees that are there. And then that whole rear yard area gets virtually no sun because of the redwood trees. And so, and the redwood trees are a mess. They just constantly drop needles and leaves and seed pods, and it would just be a mess. And we don't want to request removal of any of the redwood trees because they really are pretty magical back there. And this lawn space where the pool is going, it has some patio spaces and a fountain that the Dickersons don't like, and the kids don't use the lawn. And it's just, it's kind of it's just not a very used space, and it does get some good sun. And that's really the bulk of the reason for putting the pool in that area.
Okay, thanks.
Does anyone else from the ADR have any comments? Or sorry, any questions before we get to our comments and open it up to the audience? Okay, is there anyone in the audience who wants to make a comment or have a question on this project? Okay, I will bring it back to the ADR. Mark, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I struggle with this one a little bit. We've seen a lot of pools in the setbacks recently, so we have a lot of experience with this. My first thought obviously was the same thought Joey had, and then probably the remainder of the ADR team. Like, let's locate this in the rear yard where it seems like it would naturally be located. It would be most likely it would be in violation of the rear yard setback in lieu of the side yard setback. However, the rear yard neighbor is up, is some distance away and up a very large hill. So the proximity for that pool would be, for neighbor issues, would be very different if it was located in the rear yard. And I could foresee some setback violations if that was the case, because it is a pretty generous rear yard. The pool location where it is proposed, it troubles me a little bit. We usually deal with sound, right? It's not much of a visual issue with there's some privacy, but it's mostly a sound issue. This location, I struggle with it because most likely this noise is going to echo off that building and bounce right over to that southern neighbor on Bolinas, and that, it's going to form like a little bit of an echo chamber there. And that, I'm not certain that I think is it 4 feet into the setback? I'm trying to discern exactly how many feet it is into the setback. Can Brad, can you answer that? Do you know, is it 2 or 3 feet?
The water is 3 feet into the setback.
Right. So, we've had this one before in a way of 3 feet. If you move that 3 feet to the north, or I guess that would be to the east, if I'm correct.
Correct.
Isn't substantively going to change the acoustics of that pool location, right? I mean, I think that would be is an understood statement, right? 3 feet is not going to really materially change how much sound is echoing into that southern or that neighbor on the west. However, I understand where it's located there based on getting passage by the building and into the rear yard. So I have to admit, I don't know where to stand on this one other than, it's wholly unfortunate that I tend to understand the rear yard is not ideal with the redwoods. Generally, cutting down redwoods to put in a pool is not looked positively upon from our town, including the design review team. I live under redwoods. They drop a ton of stuff. It's an inappropriate location for a pool. I'm not sure that this side yard is the appropriate location for a pool. So, I would look at ways, skinning the pool up. Is there a way you can keep it out of the setback that is, that would require, that would, avoid requiring a variance? We mean a very skinny pool or being very close to the home. I'm not sure that's appropriate either. So let some other, committee members speak, and maybe I'll come back for a last few comments. But those are some of the things that are going through my mind of, is there a way to tuck this thing in the back that works? Probably not. But I'm not sure it's appropriate on this side yard, given the proximity of the home and the proximity of the home on the opposite side of the fence. So maybe some other ADR members can comment and build upon those thoughts, or have some new thoughts.
Thanks, Mark. Who would like to go next? Joey?
Well, I went first the last time, but I'll
Okay, you can go last this time. Laura, I'll call on you.
spread the wealth.
Sure. Hi. So yeah, I think it's a little bit of a tricky one here. I can see the need to put it here due to the redwoods in the rear yard. And it's not much into the setback. And shifting it over would not allow for passage. It looks like those are doors into the house, maybe along the west elevation. And then the other thing I thought about was just when you're standing at the street walking by, it's actually pretty visible through that fence, that space. So I don't know if there would be an opportunity for additional planting along the street facade, or if there would be any way for that fence to be a bit more private there. Oh, okay, it's solid. It got changed. Thank you. Yeah, so again, I mean, I'm kind of new to the ADR group and trying to learn how we make decisions. So I wouldn't feel comfortable saying either way right now.
Stephen?
I think that Mark and Laura have both been as articulate as possible about this, which is difficult. I see the reason it's not located in the rear yard, but that doesn't mean that this therefore is appropriate here in the side yard. I know shifting over 3 feet wouldn't change the nature of the relationship with the side property, but it's hard to kind of justify an exception for something that feels like it doesn't quite fit. And so I don't know. This is where I feel like the town needs to have some better policies surrounding this particular question. And so I feel uncomfortable about it.
Okay.
Am
Can
I?
Can I go back to you now,
I'm the
Joey?
last one. Mark?
Okay. I mean, I think architecturally and design wise, if you were building this from scratch and there were no redwoods, 99 out of 100 landscape architects and architects would put the pool in the back. I mean, that's sort of where the pool belongs in this house. It's great that the current neighbor is supportive of this project. I think if the current neighbor wasn't supportive of it, it would be a whole different question. I do almost think, and I love redwoods, and I planted, probably 24 of them on my property. But they're not sacred. It almost seems like you'd be better off having the pool almost against the rear fence, relatively far away from that 40-inch huge redwood, even if you had to take down a tree or two. I mean, you're taking down trees here anyway, just different kinds of trees. I'd almost rather see the pool back there, and I think they'd like it more than sort of being squished. Like when you see it from the road, and you can see the patio from the road, so you'd see the pool from the road, it seems like you'd have more privacy and a more relaxing space if you were able to take out 1 or 2 trees and still leave that beautiful 40-inch one. So that's my comment on the pool location. And I agree with everyone else. I don't think that it's great the neighbor isn't opposed to this. And I don't think the difference between 12 feet or 15 feet, I don't think that 3 feet makes a difference, as everyone else has said. If the town's going to allow the pool there, I don't think there's any reason to move it 3 feet closer to the house. It would just take away the walkway, which would make no sense at all. I'd almost think the town should say it's okay to cut a couple trees down and put it on that back fence. And those other neighbors are so high up on the hill, I would think they wouldn't care at all. I assume they have a pool on the other side of that hedge you can see from the back there. But I did not walk all the way back, Brad, to see if you put that pool, close to the rear fence, 4 or 6 feet away from that rear fence running along it, if that area is also completely overhung with trees. Or
Yeah,
if that's more clear
this is
back there.
Yeah, this is Roger. I mean, we obviously spent a lot of time looking at whether, the pool belongs. In a perfect world, if we were to start from scratch, that's where we'd put it. There's no question. Those redwoods, and if you can see the 24-foot redwood next to the shed, there's a 42-foot redwood just on the other side of that shed. There's a nice 26-foot between the 40, and then the cluster of redwoods on the east. It's a really, we get full coverage back there. There is no sun. And these aren't small growing redwoods. They are very mature. And they're beautiful trees. And you can see the trees you can see them from coming down the street. When we come down Bolinas, you can see them from Kensington. We spent a lot of time. Were they healthy? We've had arborists come out and take a look at them. We've been feeding them properly. We care about the redwoods, quite frankly. They're beautiful trees, and to have a pool there just with the roots, number one, I'm sure the complex underneath, no matter where we put a pool of size, we're going to be dealing with significant roots from all those trees. And there's just no sun coverage whatsoever around there. It's very wet back there. Just because you can tell the sun doesn't get back there much at all. And on the other side of it, that hill coming up from behind us doesn't provide any sun whatsoever. They've got trees, they planted redwoods up the hill from us as well. So, I mean, there's going to be zero sun back there as long as there's any hope of having a pool there. It's not going to work. We'd much rather have it in back, but to be, cognizant and appreciative of those trees, it made sense to squeeze it into the side. And the neighbors, he said he's very close friends with the 2 previous owners. And he said both of those people, and in fact, there's been 3 owners, but 2 of the previous 3 owners really wanted to have a pool right there. And he's been supportive of it from the beginning. So obviously, if he had a problem with it, we would have had a very different design, if a pool at all. So it's not perfect, but it fits really well for both both the trees and getting sun on a spot you want to have some sun on it.
Okay,
Can I
well, thank
make
you,
one
Roger.
more
That-
note
that's
too
very
on
helpful to
this?
hear.
Is that the fire pit and that circular patio with the arbor, those are existing and those were approved through a town of Ross process as being in the setback. And the pool, part of this was that the pool aligned with that arbor and the fire pit and the circular patio and aligned with the entry gate. So there was a design thought of when they did that round circular patio. And that was approved as a variance, I guess. And also the stairs that go up to the upper level, they jut into the space where I barely have walking space between the pool and the bottom step. So moving the pool towards the house, it doesn't work. I can't change those stairs. The rise and run is already maxed out and I can't push those stairs. You know, I can't push those up away from the pool in any way. So there were some other factors with, you know, with how the pool got to be where it is. And then if we were conforming to the setback, the pool would be like 9 feet in width, which is not a pool, really, you know. 12 feet in width is barely a pool.
Yeah, and I don't think any, you know, no one had a problem, as we all said, with that 3 feet. Hey, let me ask you a question, Brad. Where the pedestrian gate is between the driveway and the pool, is that a 6 foot tall solid wooden gate?
That fence, I think, is more like 48 inches tall, but then there's an auto gate and there's another fence that says existing gate, and then that's a picture of the pool equipment.
And
We could
is the-
potentially raise that gate, but we would like to, you know, we want privacy as well. And we were talking about potentially planting a hedge at the street. There's a space along the sidewalk where we could dense up that privacy.
Because I never went into the Dickerson's house. I was just on the sidewalk. I don't know if the sidewalk is higher up, but when I was standing on the sidewalk there, you know, I could see right through to where this proposed pool is. So it seems that you should either have like a 6 foot tall, I mean, I think it's actually the law to have a 6 foot tall pedestrian gate anyway, between the street and a pool. Although in this case, maybe your driveway gate is 6 feet. But it seems just for privacy, you'd either want that to be 6 feet tall and solid, or not even have a pedestrian gate there, just have that hedge carry all the way across. And most of the time, you're going to be entering that pool not from the street or the driveway. And when you do have guests, they can always just walk around the house like they do for every other house that has a pool in the backyard. It seems weird that people on the street will be seeing the pool, because that's a very unusual thing in the town. Like, I can't think of many homes where you see the pool, you know, as you're walking down the sidewalk.
Well, I think that we want to make it private from.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's going to be either putting in a solid gate 6 feet, beefing up all the hedging and the privacy, or it's probably going to be a combination of both of those, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we have the same goal. We don't want people on the sidewalk looking into the pool.
No, and you know, a 6 foot tall fence inside the property is never a problem. You know, sometimes the town doesn't want you to have it at the front, but they never care once it's like an interior property fence.
Well, we could change that gate it's under the arbor to a 6 foot solid wood gate. That would be totally fine.
And that,
I'd love a 12-foot gate personally. So that works for me.
yeah, that's just my opinion of either having a solid hedge there where no one can ever look through, or something at least 6 feet tall to just for your privacy, and so it's not weird on the street when you walk by. Like, you don't want people.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I sort of agree with all the other members of the ADR that architecturally it's weird for the pool to be there, but I understand you're doing it there because of the redwoods. It's sort of a hard thing to figure out a better solution. If you like the redwoods, that's where the pool goes. If you don't care about the redwoods, you put it in the back. And the town usually
I just
cares
assumed that
about mature redwoods.
I just thought that we would never be allowed to remove these redwood trees. It's a mature grove of redwood trees, and
And that's quite possible. So were you about to say something, Joey?
Yeah, it has everyone gone or?
Yeah, everyone's gone. Everyone was very indecisive.
Okay, well, I will mention that we have been tasked by the town council. They've asked us to be more decisive and to give them more guidance on these types of things so that they don't go all the way to town council without a little more decisive action on our part. And one thing I should mention is that when I hear like one neighbor says it's fine and you have a great relationship, that doesn't make a lot of difference to me because you have to imagine that people are going to sell their properties. And what I think we should really be focusing on as a design review group is this good design for the town? Is this, these adjacencies, is this the best design we can come up with? I would point out that your very amenable neighbor, as nice as he or she may be, and doesn't care that his front door is 10 feet. I mean, his property line is basically his front door and it's 10 feet from your spa. And I just don't think that's good design. You know, I think it's great. They're all friends and they all approve of everything, but those houses are going to be sold. And then somebody's got a house that has a pool and a spa that's 10 feet from the front door. No matter how good your screening is, there's noise associated with a pool. And I do believe that there are properties in Ross where you walk into them to buy them and you think to yourself, you know, this is probably not a pool property. It might not really have potential for a great pool. That said, I thought to myself when I saw this project, geez, I'd rather get rid of a few redwoods, which are pretty ubiquitous around the town of Ross and Marin County, and put that pool all the way to the back because there's a hillside there. The people above probably don't care. And it just seems inappropriate to me to grant a variance. You know, a 15-foot setback is really not very much anyway. And a 10-foot setback is a lot less. And when you see that pool taped out there, it just doesn't look like an appropriate location. You know, I'm sure you could squeak it by in town council if you skinnied it up and you get it out of the setback. But I really question, do you even want a pool there? So I'm kind of going to be unfortunately the unpopular one here and say that it just doesn't seem like a very gracious place to put a pool. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Joey. So in this one, I think we all have the same exact comments. And then it's then a matter of opinion whether or not you'd recommend it be approved or not. So I think we should just say yes or no for each of us. Joey, I would take that as a no from you.
And Chair, before you take the poll, I did get another comment on this project.
All right, thank you, Patrick.
So if you don't mind my sharing, this is from John Bozel, and his comment is another point about moving the pool to the back of the yard is that there's a Marin Municipal Water District drainage pipe that runs through the back of the property and all others on Bolinas. And he is in support of the application.
Okay, and I'm sorry, did you say where he lived?
He's 103 Bolinas.
So the neighbor on the other side, away from the pool.
Correct.
Because 107 was the other one who approved it, or approved of the project.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Okay, Stephen, do you want to be the second person to give a yay or nay vote?
Sure. I will say yes.
Mark?
If you want a little more color on that, I think that just these tight houses on Bolinas and on parts of Poplar just don't conform by any stretch to kind of the setback standards in a way that really allows for enough patio function, enough pool function. I think it's appropriate to confine the house there, but I feel like the neighborhood kind of accepts the tight conditions and the noise that comes from family life. And so I think whether you put it in the backyard, the side yard, everyone's going to hear it all the time anyway, kind of, you know. I said yes to one on Poplar and everyone else said no and got mad at me, but I'm saying yes again.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Mark? And you're on mute, Mark.
Yeah, no, I
That's why I
realize.
likes it.
You know, I kind of side with Joey on this. I'm just not sure I don't think it's an appropriate spot in this particular development. I know that I would hate to lose some redwoods in that particular grove back there, but I think that might be actually a better solution for this particular project. It doesn't, when you walk in, it immediately feels like it's in an odd spot for this particular lot.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Laura?
Sure. I actually agree with Stephen and his thoughts on this, so I would be a yes.
Okay, great. That's the problem with going last. Yeah, I think this is really difficult because to me, in looking at it, it's an awkward place that a pool doesn't belong. But I also agree with Stephen that in these neighborhoods, they sort of accept and understand the tighter conditions and often have a house that's, 6 feet from their property line looking down upon them.
Can I just one thing, and John mentioned it and I should have as well. There's that the water going underneath the property is essentially a creek that goes in the back of all the streets on Bolinas. So, and that I forgot to mention that there's really nowhere to put that pool because of that water that flows in the back of the property as well, for what it's worth.
Yeah, and I don't think the 3 feet makes a difference here or not. And I'll say yes, and the town council will need to figure out if they're going to grant a variance for a pool on Bolinas, as they do with most houses on Bolinas. So I'm saying yes due to the redwoods and the neighbors, really. If it wasn't for either one of those things, for sure I would say put the pool in the back because that's where it belongs in this house.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Brad.
Thank
Appreciate it,
you.
everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
That's even more difficult than it should have been. Okay, 5 Madera Avenue, which we've already looked at before. This is just an addition or a change in the driveway to a house project that we approved relatively recently.
Yes, thank you, Chair Krushnet, ADR group members. The project before you is the Stevens residence at 5 Madera Avenue. Yes, you did see the project at this location a few months ago. The project was a new deck cover over an existing deck. This project is related to the entry landscaping and hardscaping. The owners are Ann and Chuck Stevens, and the applicant is the Peterson Associates. And the project site is located here between Baywood Avenue and Madera Avenue, obviously an irregular shaped lot, little less than an acre in size. The predominant characteristic is the 60% average lot slope. And the existing house, of course, is developed at the bottom of the slope. So that's an existing condition that the property owner is dealing with their current plans to renovate the entry. Project history, the original construction, according to the county assessor, was 1923. In 1998, a variance was issued for a sunroom addition. In 2010, some landscape work, and including a lot merger resulting in the existing irregular lot shape. And in 2020, just a few months ago, the nonconformity permit was issued and approved for the new deck cover. So the project description is shown here with the existing site plan on the left and the proposed site plan on the right. The proposal is to expand the existing driveway by constructing a new 6-foot retaining wall and placing 20 cubic yards of fill behind that retaining wall, and then extending the driveway over the top of that, and then topping that on the edge with a 3.5 foot guardrail. So in plan view, this is the existing edge of driveway with a wall that is located here. And then there's a small wood deck that extends out. And so the proposal is to basically remove the cantilevered wood deck and extend the paved driveway out into this location here we see on the right. So this area here is where the fill would be located, and the 6-foot retaining wall is right along this edge here. And then the rest of the project involves renovating and reconfiguring the entry walkways and stairs and plantings in this area, and essentially maintaining the existing configuration with some slight alignment changes and updating materials. Here's the elevation views showing first of all, the driveway change here. We see the existing condition at the front of the property. We see that there's basically lattice work that's fills in the space below the existing deck and driveway platform. And in the project, the new plan view or the new elevation view, we would see a stucco faced concrete retaining wall as opposed to the lattice, which would still remain to the left. And so that retaining wall would be approximately 4 feet forward of the current location of the top of the slope. And then in elevation view, in terms of the entry, there would be really minimal change. As we can see, the stairs would be extended out a little bit. So the structural improvements more than 18 inches above grade within the front yard setback would be increased by extending the walkway out in this fashion. But that is, I believe, supported by the better alignment and the better access that would be gained by the project. And so here's colors and materials that are proposed for the project. Quality hardscape materials, again, stucco facing for the new retaining wall, and a variety of plant materials. A 3.5 foot wood guardrail would be located on top of the driveway. So that might be the sort of the major first feature that's visible from the public right of way. Public comments, none received. And in summary, staff requests that the ADR group discuss the merits of the project and provide a formal recommendation to the town council regarding the merits of the project consistent with design review criteria and standards. That concludes my presentation. I'm available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Does anyone have questions for Matthew before we go on to comments?
No.
So I'll go first on this one. I can be much more decisive. I love retaining walls. I built 120 feet of retaining wall in Ross. I think it's great when people make their projects more structurally sound, because then they don't have the disaster that had happened to myself and others where the town doesn't let you fix a retaining wall and then it washes away in some storm, and then it's much more of a hassle to redo under emergency circumstances. So I think this would be a nice change. The first time I went to this house, I thought the entrance to their garage looked a little, let's call it rinky dink for that house. It didn't look good. I think this would be a vast improvement. But does anyone else have any, I guess we're just moving to final comments.
Do we have any applicant who wants,
Was there anyone in the audience that had a comment on this?
or the applicant themselves?
Or the applicant? No, okay. I sort of assumed not. But thank you, Mark. Mark, do you want to comment since you're speaking?
Yeah, I don't have any particular concerns about this project. We've seen a lot of this project over the course of the past 10 years, this home. So no, I don't have any particular concerns about it. I think the detail on the railing, I don't know if we know exactly what that looks like, because as Matthew pointed out, that'll be a pretty prominent feature. It might be good to understand if that matches other details. I'm struggling to remember the deck we approved, the up top, that had a railing of some sort we were trying to match with the rest of the project. I would love to know if this matches that, if this is a different material, a different design altogether. I saw a little image in what, Matthew, you flashed forward of, I'm not sure if that's the design of it or the finish of it, but that might be interesting to know what that railing is going to look like.
So
And is stucco the right appropriate material for that wall? I don't remember any other stucco material on the project, but I could be mistaken. So those would be my two thoughts of what's the material and the finish, the design of that rail, and is stucco really the appropriate material? I think there's a lot of rock on this particular project, stone walls. Is that more appropriate in this particular case? Those would be my questions to the applicant if the applicant was here, or the designer.
The applicant is here and would like to respond.
Oh, please. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, this is Pete Peterson, landscape architect. Yeah. The existing garage has a shingle side and it has a stucco side. So it's a lot of it. The walls going up to the entry are all stucco. So we're using that as a common thread, sort of the base or the plinth that everything sits on. The railing, we're hoping to disassemble the railing that's there and reapply it to the wall. So rather than throw that stuff away, it's in reasonably good serviceable condition. It may need a finish on it, but it's kind of what's there. It's what people are used to seeing, and we'd like to just consider that as our guardrail. And it's actually drawn like it is. So it is a current code compliant openings and things like that. It's a hefty wood rail.
Great. I appreciate the clarification there.
You bet.
Yeah. No concerns. Just those were questions. No concerns from my point of view.
Thank you.
Stephen?
I think it looks fine. I too had the same question about the stucco. I think the stucco, it wasn't apparent to me, or I didn't look carefully enough to see it on the garage. And it feels like a non sequitur, like an uninvited guest to the cast of characters there. And so it'd be great if that were planted or something like that. I think the railing's fine. Anyway, overall, I think it's great.
We do have planting down below in front of the wall there. So that should help soften it.
Joey?
So I may be the expensive opinion at the party, but I looked at this and just thought this is a no-brainer. Obviously, this would be a great improvement. I have no problem with it. I'm very sorry you had to wait through all of these other more complicated projects, because this definitely should be done. I really have no problem with it. What I do think you guys should consider is, if you're going to expand the driveway, make it a 2-car garage, and make the garage, rebuild the garage and make it match the house, because the stucco is the outlier and it's the uninvited guest because it probably was done later and it doesn't really fit with the style of the house. But if you can't afford to do that and you stick with the garage that is there and you use the stucco, I mean, nobody can see it except the people in the garden down below. So maybe you grow creeping fig on it or something like that, but it's really not a feature that any of us would ever notice again if we weren't invited to your garden. So that's my opinion. I think I think this is going to be a huge improvement for the property, and I would support a 2-car garage there if you proposed it, because I think it's way out of the setbacks, right?
Well, due to the odd lot size or configuration, the setbacks are rather onerous. You can see in that existing, I'd say 99% of our garage is in this side yard setback. And that's,
Oh, I missed that. When I looked at the lot plan, it looked like you had all that room down below.
well, there is a lot of room down below, but the setback configuration makes it almost the whole house is in the setbacks. I mean,
Right.
just the history of the development of the parcel. I don't think you can touch anything here without a variance. So
Exactly. It's just one of these, it's one of these classic Ross houses where nothing is
nothing.
conforming. But, you know, in terms of you're going to all this expense to do this, that would just be my friendly suggestion.
Well, thank you for that, and I'll bring that up with Chuck and Ann and see if, you know, who knows, they might have the stomach for that. We'll just see how that goes.
Right, but I'm 100% in favor of what you have proposed here, and I'm sure you'll deal with that stucco wall. Just plan it out.
Thank you. Laura?
Sorry, I was muted. I agree. I think the staircase is a nice improvement. I think it makes sense with that dead end there on the street to increase the width of the driveway and parking space. And people already kind of talked about the stucco versus stone. So I guess my only thought was with that retaining wall is that I understand there'll be some planting on it. Is that something that's visible from the neighbor's property at all?
I would say you'd probably have to stand on a chair to see it, because that home is down in a pocket down quite a bit below this. But no, we're planting it, so it will be softened.
Great. Okay. Yeah, I'm in support of all of the work. Mhm.
Thank you.
So Matthew, we're unanimously in support of the proposal.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, now we will have a rare conceptual advisory design review of 3 Newell Road, the Murray and Jurek. Sorry, I'm not pronouncing that right. I pronounced it right one time though, I'm sure. Saying it both ways. Brad, are you going to be presenting this?
Well, I think
Or Ken, there you are. Hi, Ken.
Ken,
Sorry,
I'm-
can't come up.
I'm joining for fun.
And Chair, if you don't mind, I'll just give a brief introduction on what conceptual design review is, and then I'll hand it over to the project team. Essentially, this is not a project that we have a formal application for at this time. This is something that's been discussed with staff in concept, and the applicant would like to take advantage of the fact that we do have this advisory design body while they're early on and they haven't invested too many resources into the design of the project yet, to bring the concept in front of this group. And this is a workshop to gather feedback from the advisory design review group. So as opposed to making a recommendation or saying whether or not you'd support this moving forward to council, this is the opportunity to just apply your talents and skills to work with the applicant on making sure that this project, when it does come in for application to the town, is already on a good footing. And it's got the concepts of good design that you'll be looking for when you are making a decision on the project down the road. And so with that, I'll hand it over to the applicant team.
Thanks, Patrick.
I guess that's me. I'm Ken Lindstedt. Nice to see you all again. Are we the first ones to do a study session at ADR? It sounds like this hasn't been done before. I was
No.
pretty excited.
We've done it, but it's not our typical meeting.
We
But
might have done some in the very early days, Ken, very early.
Okay, good.
Way
So
more fun than most of our meetings.
I don't know how many of you have been to the site, but hey, someone from my team, maybe Jessica, if you could bring up the presentation. This is a property kind of way.
Yes, sorry. It says that, the host is disabled.
Somebody talking.
Someone underwater.
This is the thing about Zoom.
It sounds like Jessica's internet's a little slow right there.
But that could be a problem.
Is that any better?
That's
is
better.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Is it possible to gain access to share my screen? Pops
Oh,
up with
yeah.
a message that the host disabled.
Let's see,
Screen
share
share.
screen.
Let me, I'll promote you to co-host.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. We've got it now. We can see it.
Okay, great. So 3 Newell Road, which is, you know, the east side of Sir Francis Drake, up off of Canyon, way at the top of the hill there, and you can kind of see it on this this Google Earth view. 3-acre property, and it's pretty great. It's just like at the very top. It's actually, this property is let's see, I think the northeast corner is the intersection of San Rafael, San Anselmo, and Ross, all on the same property. So quite a bit of energy there. And you can see that there's a, let's see if I can, am I allowed to draw on this thing? Do I have the ability to do that? I'm gonna try. There's a pool down here off of Crest Road. And this is the house that exists right now. I'm gonna say it's somewhere around between 9,000 and 10,000 square feet. It's a 1-story house that was built in 1949. We had a historic review of this property by Caitlin Hibma of Left Coast, and she determined that it's not, there were so many additions done to this over the years that she didn't see it as a historic resource. So my clients, Lynn and Brad Murray is here tonight, who can speak a little bit about you know, his experience there on the property. But I met them out on the property, I'm going to say 4 or 5 months ago. And there's this, and maybe Jessica, we could go to the next slide here. It's this kind of low slung 1-story house that meanders across the property. There's kind of this plateau at the top of the ridge there. Great views of Tam, surrounded by trees. And there's a feel to this place that my clients really love, and they want to retain the spirit of what's there. But the fact is, to try to remodel this place and bring it up to today's codes, oftentimes we just need to take these houses down if we can. But we want to retain a lot of the site elements that are there. The pool house that's down at the bottom of the property we want to keep. So I'm going to say that the big thing that I would love for you guys to opine on is just how we're handling the site. I'm not really going to go into architecture today because I don't really have exterior elevations, but I feel like the biggest part of this project is just like, how do we site the property? How do we site the buildings, and what are our primary access points? So let's go to the next one. This might not be easy, but let's see. This is Newell Road. There's a driveway that heads up to the north here. And then this is where the cars park, right in this area here. And you know, you're seeing the whole outline of the property there. Right along the ridge here, let's say the house kind of occupies this kind of like, I guess it's more of an east-west orientation here. There's this oval pool down below and a pool house. And then there's this kind of really cool stone walkway that leads you down to the pool. And I'd say there's a kind of a bit of a lawn space here, and all the views to Tam are kind of that way. So in thinking about how we would redo the orientation of the buildings on this site, maybe we can go to the next slide. this is actually just showing you the existing house in more detail. I think this was the original house here. And then in the late 90s, there was a big addition done over on the hill here. That was a combination of a garage here, like a hot tub, a rec room in this area here. And then below this garage was a guest suite. So let's go to the next one. This is the lower part of the plan here that shows this guest suite. And then this is the lower, like below the hot tub, and there's kind of like a hot tub gym area, and below that is a changing room. That's what you see here. Let's go to the next one. And there is a second story that somebody added. Let's go back one more. Somebody added a second story to this existing one-story wing, probably back in the 70s or 80s. So maybe can we zoom in a little bit, Jessica? So in red, we're showing the outline of the existing house. And I'd say the big moves here are creating a drive court that you can arrive at, that you can actually turn a fire truck around in, because the current one doesn't accommodate one. So I'd say the shape of this arrival court here is really all about, what's going to accommodate the Hammerhead T. We brought out the Rob Bastian from the fire department to take a look at this property, just to make sure that we're doing the right things with fire. And he had some recommendations for us that we can go through, but this seemed like the right call. We took the garage and pulled it over here to the east. And so really we have a primary entry now straight on. And this is a one-story structure fairly close to where the existing one-story structure is. And then we have a breezeway over here that leads to a two-story structure in this area. That is the bedroom wing. So the big idea here was, let's keep a low slung one-story gabled form essentially in the same spot that the current house is in. And then remove kind of all of this and move it back, because at the north end of the property here there's just a bunch of trees and it falls off quickly. So we thought, let's move this structure back and allow a kind of a big, let's call it a meadow garden space here that the clients would really love to have. So I would say that the primary planning ideas here were to do a two-story structure that's completely disparate and separate from the main structure, connected by this glassy breezeway, so you could actually see through here and kind of get this sense of gardens on both sides. Let's show the
Hey, Ken,
yeah.
I know you're not talking about exterior elevations today, which is fine, but could you explain a little bit about the height up there, particularly, I guess in that structure relative to the existing plate,
Yes.
or
Yes.
kind of form there?
Yeah, so I do have a site section that I can show you that'll kind of describe how this whole property feels. So that maybe we'll just keep going here and I'll show that to you so you get a sense of it. Let's go to the next one. Oops, is there a, let's see if we can find a downstairs of the existing. Yeah, so basically we've created this big deck off of the back of the main structure. And this is where we're getting some downstairs space, which is going to be kind of a rec room and a gym. So we're stepping down the hill. And I thought it would be kind of interesting to see if we could keep this original guest house that was done in the 90s, because there's so much structure to it and there's these big stone retaining walls. And I thought, God, if we can just maybe spruce this up and make better use of it, it would be nice not to just tear this whole thing down and start over. So what you see right there is the existing location of a guest suite. Okay, let's go to the, and actually, as Stephen just asked, maybe Jessica, let's go to the section so we can kind of address. So 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 I would say the existing house is kind of exactly, in this location here. And this is where we decided to make the main bar of our house. And you're seeing that we've kind of carved in some basement space underneath it. But the existing grade of this house is really here. We're at the top of the hill here, and we're still maintaining that. This over here is showing that I've got a 2-story structure to be determined that is set far enough back that I don't think anyone's ever going to see it. As far as I can tell, nobody can see this property unless you're up on Mount Tam. And then this deck, which is off of the main great room space, we're going to just capture the space underneath it so we're stepping down the hill. I had this idea that I wanted to do a little bridge out to a stair to get down to this pool house. But in talking this through with my clients, they said they don't want it. So you can disregard that. It's cool. I thought it was kind of fun, but it's gone. And this is essentially where the pool is currently, down at the bottom. It's right near Crest Road. And we're just going to kind of spruce that up a little bit. There's no big plans for that area other than to just kind of take what's there and make it a little nicer. So maybe we should go to the landscape plan. And Janelle Hobart is here, who did the landscape, and maybe she can speak a little bit to what we're doing with the gardens.
Hi. I don't know if I'm on camera or not. Hi there. So the concept for the landscape is to embed the house in a native hillside landscape. There's a lot of sloping areas around the house. And so we're trying to tie there's a lot of Algerian ivy currently. So we're trying to replace that with more native appropriate planting, and then kind of contain the garden around the courtyard, around the entry court, sort of out the windows of the main house, but try to join the landscape with the views of Tam and the surrounding native Marin landscape. And this accentuate some special trees and places that don't block the view. And then rework the circulation a little bit down to the pool and around the property in general, so they can circumambulate the whole property. Any questions?
I have one, Janelle, actually. Hi.
Yeah. Hi.
I'm very curious with the WUI regulations and all of the fire concerns we have, if that is impacting the types of plants you're picking, in terms of, you're having to pick a whole palette of non-flammable planting, basically.
Mm-hmm.
What would that, just out of curiosity, how would that change the landscape you might have done and what you would be doing for a house like this up on a crest?
Well, earlier today, we were having a design team conversation about removing some of the trees on the property that are recommended to be removed by the fire department, like bay trees and any non-native flammable pines or any needle trees. So I think generally the fire department's main comment on these sorts of projects is to clear anything that's touching the house or directly around the house, and to leave some green swards, like we've got the lawn curving around the side of the house, any kind of areas like that where you're watering. How does it impact what I do? The list becomes shorter and shorter of what we're actually allowed to plant. There's also the water district and water needs and fire. They're not compatible. The needs of the fire department and the needs of the Marin Water District are pretty much in conflict. So it's trying to find the best way forward and to create a landscape that's safe. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, just curious.
Yeah.
Well, also, I think, Janelle, you had talked about where I just highlighted, you were saying maybe the beautiful sense of garden would be at the arrival in this interior court. And then as you start moving around it, these areas around here would be more native and less, not as ornamental, more kind of native and less flammable.
Right, and those ornamental gardens are usually watered more, so it makes them wetter and harder to burn. So I think in general, the whole landscape, when it's touched and new, it tends to be on irrigation, so it gets watered. So It's less flammable.
Thanks. I was just curious.
Sure.
So, and also I would say, you know, at the end of the day, this project is going to be probably 1,000 square feet bigger square footage wise than it currently is. But I think the net, you know, the impervious surfaces are going to be less, and we're going to have less footprint than the existing house. You know, we're gaining our area by going second story, primarily in that bedroom wing that you see over here.
Ken, that's a 1-story element on the back of that, I would characterize it north side. I mean, I'm not sure which way is north anymore, but.
Are you talking about here?
Yes, that's a 1-story element, I think.
That's a 1-story element, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think Stephen was specifically asking, as those contours get really tight in that area, I think that was Stephen, did I understand that correctly? You were looking for kind of that section, right? Across that building on that side of the home?
That's right, but I'm really unfamiliar with how visible this is from public spaces or from public roadways. And
yeah,
kind of looking at it on Google Earth and doing the 3D tilt thing and trying to figure out if it would daylight above the ridge in a meaningful way for anybody.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that I can see from a sighting perspective that would be of any concern at all. And I don't know that it is, you know, because I'm really not familiar with how visible that ridge is. And really, if it's a ridge, I just don't get it yet, you know.
Yeah, well, so this red line is kind of where the existing house is as a 1-story. There is a 2-story section right here.
I get that totally, Ken. I just don't know driving around how visible that is. And like,
yeah, I get it.
Thing, would it poke out like a monument, you know, above the tree line, above the skyline?
Yeah, this is a giant kind of canopy of trees here. So I guess the answer is, yeah, I think it's that's a 2-story element is going to be completely embedded within the treescape, but maybe we're going to probably need to show you photos and much more data at our real.
We reviewed a project, I don't remember what street it was on, where the fire department required such tree removal that the house itself, which was taller than its original counterpart, daylighted in such a meaningful way that became an issue for us as a group, you know.
Yeah.
That one
upper road, upper.
Yeah.
They actually required so much tree removal that so many neighbors and friends around town were saying, how'd you let that happen? And I just kept saying the fire department every tree that was removed was required by the fire department. It just made the project more visible.
And it was the proximity of the 2-story element to the road, which I think we all responded to and the neighbors are responding to. And I think Stephen's right. I don't know this site well enough to know whether or not that 2-story element, if we go to sort of massing, Ken, which is what I think, you know, proposing here, is that 2-story element pushed back on that ridge the appropriate move from a visibility and massing standpoint. I think that's what we were that's what I was going to respond to is, yeah, the 1-story elements are kind of just going to mimic what was there, right? From afar. You're not going to really see much difference, but that 2-story element's a larger 2-story element. And it is, as it pushes back to create that lawn, which I think is a nice move, by the way.
Yeah.
What is the impact on that other side as those contours are tight? If that tree canopy needs to be thinned in any significant way, does that start to become a beacon on the hill? So that would be that's like, you know, from a site strategy perspective, which is I think you're looking for feedback on, that is the concerning area versus everything else, which I think is really nice. And
yeah, so maybe the best thing would be site sections through there and off-site photographs just to kind of show you what we think we're seeing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Totally get that.
We know that nothing can be seen from Crest except like the bottom of the pool house. So I guess maybe the question would be, and I wasn't able to walk over there, but if further up Pomeroy, like 5 Pomeroy or any of those houses would have sightlines now of the small 2nd story that's there, and how pushing it back further northeast, which makes sense for the lawn, and I think is
and My feeling is there is not one person that can see this house, even with this 2-story, and we just have to demonstrate that in the next presentation. So.
Yeah, and Ken, what would be a really good idea for us is to have the fire department come out proactively and mark the trees in that I'm pointing to it on my screen here. I don't have the control of the icon, but where the contour lines are very tight, actually identify for us how many, yes, you got it. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
How many trees are going away, because that has surprised us on as we mentioned, a previous project where there was a very steep facade and it seemed fine because there were a ton of trees in front of it. And then the fire department made us take them all out. And so just if you could get them out there before our review and make them tell you what they're going to make you take out.
Yeah. So yeah, I think one of the feedback that we got from them was that they're going to be looking for a commercial grade sprinkler system up there, which I thought was interesting. That hasn't been a condition before, but I kind of get it. I think that's probably makes sense up there. And they also said expect us to be recommending a bit of tree removal. So you're right. We need to find out what that means, because I've always wondered, how do the planning bodies and the fire department come to some kind of meeting of the minds here so that people aren't surprised like this? And I think what you're saying is let's figure it out up front so we're not.
Exactly. I mean, basically, given all the terrible fires, they hold all the cards now, and anything they demand just happens.
Yeah.
And so you may approve a house, and it may be a house you love, but you don't really love it anymore with all those trees gone.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really smart thing to get out in front of that.
Okay.
Ken, it's a real meeting of the minds. It's just really what they'll sign off on.
Yeah. Is there any requirement to have a water tank in addition to the commercial sprinkler system? I've heard that on occasion. I just was curious.
So that's a good point. I mean, Jessica, maybe pull up the survey. There is a pretty big water tank on this property that really is there for irrigation. There's 2 wells and a water tank.
Oh, okay.
And it's
right. It's labeled down there. It's hot tub. Is that it? Is that the one?
It's right there.
Okay.
And that is actually probably a great source of fighting fires when it comes to it, and the pool below. But yeah, that does exist.
Okay.
Well, and they just put Brad, they just put a fire hydrant in the driveway as well about a year ago.
Yeah, you mean right there?
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Back to the house too, maybe just to chime in just from a site perspective, there's probably about close to an acre-ish or so behind the house. So even if you took out, all the trees at that level.
Yeah, down here.
It's a whole forest back there all the way down to the property line.
Yeah, and the visibility thing is like, I'd have to go down into San Rafael somewhere and try to figure out how to find this hill. You know what I mean? There may be some clearing near the house, but it's given, I think what Brad's saying, given that entire forest there, I don't think it's going to have an impact. But actually what Steven said is right. Like if you're right at the top though, it can kind of poke up and be in daylight. So we got to look at that.
Okay, yeah, that should be one of your main concerns, just from what we've seen before, because even if we like the architecture, if all of a sudden you can see it from everywhere, sometimes a town is very reluctant to approve something on a top of a hill.
Yep, got it.
And there's a whole bunch of county ridge line ordinances as well. I don't know if those ever figure into it, but I'm sure you can look those up and just confirm that it's all okay.
Yep. And I think they're also pretty focused on being fireproof. So I think our materials are going to be, it's not going to be shingles. It's not going to be wood. We're probably looking at a mixture of stone and stucco and probably metal roofs or slate roofs, one of the two.
I would build fireproof if I were building.
Yep, I get it.
Does anyone from the ADR have any more comments or suggestions for Ken?
Yeah, I'll wrap up mine. I think it's a great idea to move that wing back as far as possible to create more green and open space where the view is. I just met quickly Brad and Lynn out there today. I unfortunately surprised them, but I had a quick jog around the property. And the one thing I did mention to them, and if they don't want this right now, but it's just more of a client happiness thing for the future, is I personally think you should identify a pool site up at the level of the house now, even if they will never build it or they don't want it now, because that may be something they want later. And, I would support pushing that residential wing as far back as you need to push it, given that there's such a steep drop off and all the trees and everything we've discussed there. I just thought it might be something you think about, that someday they may want a pool up by the house. But other than that, I think it's an excellent reimagination of this property. And I would just push as much of it back toward the driveway as possible and give yourself the open space toward the view.
Are you saying that when they get old?
Well, I actually knew the Maddens who lived there before, and the pool way down there, that's why they built that funicular.
Yeah.
It's not that convenient. It's kind of fun now. And I understand how Lynn and Brad feel having little kids. They'd actually rather have the pool out of sight.
Yeah.
And just have it away where it's a special trip to go to the pool. But having had teenagers, there will come a day where it's kind of fun to have it up by the house. So I think it's great to imagine these things and plumb for them and put the gas line there and have it ready to roll if you ever want to do that.
Got
It's
it.
not really an ADR comment. It's more of like if I had this house.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Joey.
Thank you.
I'll finish up my comments. I think it's a nice sighting. I always toss in the do what you can for either solar, some version of some renewables in a home like this from scratch. Always like to see that.
For sure.
As much as possible. You're up on the
One of the
ridge.
reasons we want to redo it, actually.
Oh, great. Excellent. Yeah, you had that opportunity to design roof forms and whatnot to take full advantage of being net neutral if you could pull that off. It's funny because even the pool, Joey, below reminds me of One Upper, right? Where the pool was way down below. And we have seen a number of projects that have pulled the pool up. Glenwood, there was a pool that was like 8 feet below and they pulled it way up to the level because they didn't want their little kids out of sight. It was interesting. It's just interesting from a family perspective, what you like and what you don't. But it's a beautiful property. No other comments. I like the massing. I like how you've got it 1 story, 2 story pulled apart. I think it's really clever. I think it'll feel like a nice environment up there.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, it looks great to me. I just be aware of the ridge line as everyone else has pointed out. I think it should look great. Okay, well, if there are no more comments, are you good then, Ken?
This was fantastic, yeah. And we'll probably try to see you back in a month, if I can pull it off. Although I hear the requirements are a little more onerous now than they used to be. Yeah, something changed with ADR last time I've been here.
Talk to us. Talk to Matthew and Patrick.
Okay, I'll talk to Matthew. Okay, great. All right. Thanks for your feedback.
We have a new member. We have Laura.
Yeah.
Great. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much for your feedback.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good luck. Have fun.
Thanks.
Okay, is there any staff communication we need to do, Patrick?
Not too much. I will just mention if you've been downtown recently, you may have noticed that Crown and Crumpet, they're open now and they've built a parklet in front of their business, which is the first one we have in Ross. Especially nowadays, you're seeing them all over the place as businesses are trying to take advantage of outdoor space as much as possible. We also have installed 3 new park benches on the, I guess that would be the side of the common closest to Redwood. And we did reach out to a couple ADR group members at random just for comments on the design of that location. So we thank you for that feedback. They've been getting heavy usage, just general from observation during the day. And then especially this weekend, we closed Redwood and just opened it up. We put in a bunch of tables, invited community members downtown to just take advantage of the downtown and the nice weather, the clear air that's become so kind of uncommon recently. It was a great event, very well attended, both Friday night and Saturday night. What I'm hearing back from the businesses is that they did gangbusters. So
Oh, good.
yeah, so we will likely look for other opportunities to have something like that and take advantage of the kind of condensed downtown that we have and the ability to just close the street to traffic and invite people outside. So that was a very successful event, and so that'll be once in a while when we can do that. But the tables are there permanently, and as I said, they're getting great use.
That's great news.
Thank you. Okay, well, I would like to adjourn the meeting and apologize for being unusually indecisive on the Bolinas project.
It added some drama, so I think we all thank you.
Yeah, I could see that both ways.
Good stuff.
What can I do?